everyone has a different tolerance for incarceration. Some people, they're arrested one day, they're never going to do it ever again. They're never going to do anything bad ever again. Some people, it's a year. Some people, it's 5 years. And so the argument that jail doesn't change people's behavior is just not proven out by what we know in society. You know, you have these claims that, like, prosecutions against drug crimes are not worthwhile, right? But we've seen what's happened in California. We've seen what's happened in San Francisco and Los Angeles and Seattle, where in Oregon and Washington State, all drugs have been legalized. So people are doing the hardest drugs in public, and it's horrific. We cannot have that happen in Central Florida. Our entire state is dependent upon tourism and people wanting to move here and build homes here and start businesses and start families.
Yeah. And during these last couple of months of being downtown, and I mean, I'm seeing a lot of the homeless down there, a lot of, drugs and so on. And it's really sad, because what's happened to those places, San Francisco and different places, we don't want that here. It's not a good look. And it's, as you said, we are a tourism state, and people don't want to see that. They're coming here with their children. They're coming to see Mickey Mouse. They don't want to see crackheads on the corner. They don't want to see that.
No, they don't.
So,
and there are plenty of laws on the books that, if they are enforced, we could, address that some aspect of that problem. Obviously, solving homelessness is a challenge, and there are a number of local organizations that's their entire mission, and the city and the county and the state need to devote a lot of money towards providing support to people. And a lot of people that are homeless have a whole bunch of issues, that they're dealing with. And we need to help those people. However, that doesn't mean that we ignore the reality that we live in a community with almost 2 million people, and we would all like to go to downtown Orlando and enjoy ourselves. We have millions and millions of tourists, and we don't want tourists just going to the parks. We want tourists exploring and enjoying our entire community. And that's not going to happen when they go downtown and there are, on every single block, 1 or 2 homeless people, wearing no shoes and no shirt, or pushing an overflowing shopping cart, or just, sitting on the sidewalk with their legs splayed out, blocking where you're trying to walk. And to be fair, people are afraid to walk near those folks, because you don't, if those people have mental health issues, if those people have drug addiction issues, if those people have criminal histories, which is not uncommon with the homeless community, people are afraid, they cross the street. It just makes it less enjoyable to walk around downtown. I mean, we have a whole bunch of issues with downtown. We need more retail. We need some clothing stores down there. We need some, jewelry stores and things where people can walk and shop. It's not just bars and restaurants. But, the homeless issue can be addressed. We have trespassing statutes on the books. We have disorderly conduct statutes. We have disorderly intoxication statutes. People can be searched if, law enforcement smells marijuana. A lot of times with those marijuana searches, they reveal other drugs or firearms or whatnot,
Mhm. Mhm. I
So
was
there are ways to do it, but I'm sorry to interrupt, but the problem is that the state attorney's office, under Monique, Worrell, and Aramis Ayala would most likely just look at those cases and say, "Oh, these people are homeless. We're not going to prosecute them. They just keep getting arrested and keep getting let out." Well, they wouldn't keep getting let out if you properly sentenced them. They would be in jail and they wouldn't get out
Yeah.
until they learned they needed to do something or connect with an organization like the Coalition for the Homeless or whatnot, and they sought out all of the help that's available. um you know then we could work together on this problem.
And one thing I've come to know is that for example, I was downtown recently and I was at the Coalition for the Homeless. I don't know if you've ever been there and seen what that looks like. And so I was down and
I
I didn't
haven't.
even
I can say I have not.
oh, it's for everybody needs to stop by and see what it was. And I'd never seen it before. And I was down there, right there, just a block away from the Amway. And I actually, because I wanted to see this for myself, not knowing what I was seeing, but I just saw so many different homeless and different carts and big bags of stuff. And I parked the car and I said, let me walk. And so I walked down to the Amway, walked back to the Coalition, and I realized that what I was seeing on the road was nothing compared to what they had going on in the back. So I walked to the back, and I tell you, I walked back there. There's about 200 people, and I decided not to film it because I I didn't think it was a good idea to whip out my phone and film. But I walked it, and everybody had a cigarette in their hands. There were people rolling their joints and their blunt and their weed and everything right there. It was set up for them to do laundry, porta potties for them to bathe. And so they have the things and they had places for them to charge their cell phones. I mean, it was a whole setup of, where these people can say, you know what, my needs are being met. Like, I'm okay with just sleeping on the street because I can come here every week and get my clothes washed. I can come here and pick up whatever I need. I can come here and get the food I need, and I can get my phone charged. It's a whole setup for them to just go and then continue to live on the street. That's how I saw it.
I mean, I don't want to say that it's easy to be homeless. I'm not going to say that. It's very difficult, and we do want people's basic needs met. We can't snap our fingers and solve homelessness. Orlando and Orange County and Osceola County generally have a very, very high cost of living, and compared to other parts of the country, the amount that people are paid is lower, and housing affordability is low. And I don't normally talk about this stuff because I normally focus on the state attorney's race, but homelessness is a factor because there's a lot of crime
Because of the
within homeless communities. Homeless people are the victims of a lot of crime. And the thing is that we need to protect those victims just as much as we need to protect any victims. Now, that's why the partnership between the state attorney's office and these other organizations is essential, because there are also organizations that help people with job training, that help people with job placements. Some people do not, I mean, it's true, some people do not want to sleep indoors. Some people do want to sleep on the street, and that's not something that we as a society should accept. That's just not okay. But we do need to make sure that the state attorney's office and law enforcement are enforcing the laws. So if people are using illegal drugs and they're homeless and law enforcement sees those people need to be arrested and they need to be prosecuted, just the same as someone who has a home and has a place. So it's an issue. We need to make sure that we're working on it together.
Right. Yeah. So, like you said, there's a lot of underlining issues that these people face. And so, trying to work with law enforcement and the community, do you have any plans as to how you would bring those things together, working with the law and also trying to help the folks with their mental issues or the criminal aspect of it, or and in the youth, because a lot of what we're seeing is young people out here committing these crimes. How do we get law enforcement and the community together to aid the state attorney with these things?
So you touched on a few different issues. I'll start with the problem with juvenile crime, because we have seen a rise in juvenile crime in the last few years. It's always been thought of. When I worked as an assistant state attorney, the juvenile division was always viewed as somewhat of a revolving door. Kids get in trouble, they commit a crime, they get convicted, they get put on probation, they violate probation, and nothing really else happens to them. They just get put back on probation, and then they violate probation, and they get put back on probation. And that's not the right way to deal with this, because those kids are learning the wrong lessons. They believe they're learning that the criminal justice system and public safety is a joke. They're learning that they can do whatever they want and there's no consequences for their actions. And so we need to make sure that we use everything we can to appropriately deal with juvenile crime at the right levels, right? There's a difference between someone who's 16 or 17 years old, that's 6'2", that's shoving a gun in your face, robbing you, acting just as adult as a 19 or 20-year-old robbing you, than, a 12-year-old committing some kind of a crime. We need to make sure that we understand that there's a difference. Juvenile crime is delicate, because we don't want to just throw kids behind bars. We don't want to just send kids to a juvenile detention facility or a program. But we also don't want to just give every single kid a pass to commit whatever crime they want just because they happen to be under the age of 18 years old. We can't do that. And we've seen a rise in crime. A lot of kids, and there's been a lot of conversation about gun violence and gun crime, especially in lower economic areas. One thing that the left, the Democrats, are always talking about guns and why guns just need to be eliminated. And this is Florida. We will never eliminate guns from this state. It's part of the culture of this state. It's been since the beginning of this state being within our country. So that's not going to happen. What we need to do is we need to make sure that we encourage people to be responsible gun owners. These two issues kind of intersect. So what happens a lot of times is that juveniles, they go somewhere, they go to the mall, they go to a store that has a large parking lot, and then they start pulling on the car handles to see if the car doors are unlocked. And sometimes people leave their doors unlocked, and these juveniles break into the cars to steal things. Now, sometimes a gun owner will leave their firearm in their car. Now, that's not the way that we should be responsibly storing our guns. Or if somebody has a gun in their car and they park it in front of their house in the evening and they go inside and they don't bring their firearm inside. We need to encourage people to properly store their firearms. And then that way those firearms aren't going to be discovered in a vehicle by a juvenile breaking into the car. They might be breaking in looking to steal some change or, phone charger or whatever, but then they find a firearm and then they either sell it on the street or they give it to someone. A lot of people who commit firearm crimes, it's not like the person who steals the firearm from the car commits the armed robbery. That gun passes around many, many people. It's similar to when people, a lot of juveniles steal cars, and those cars get passed around to many, many, many people. So a lot of times when law enforcement finally gets a stolen car, they can't really prosecute the people in the car for stealing the car because that car has been passed around. So we need to make sure that the state attorney's office is working closely with law enforcement. I've been making a concerted effort to speak to the police chiefs, speak to police unions, make sure that law enforcement knows that when I'm state attorney, I'm going to work closely with them and do everything I can to help them. And, police and prosecutors are two sides of the same coin, right? And so we just have to work together. And so that also means, circling back to the juvenile crime issue, that means being tough on juveniles committing crimes when they're serious crimes and the juveniles are 16 or 17, older, high school age kids. So, other counties file charges against juveniles as an adult far more than Orange County, far more in Osceola. And so we have a system in the law called a youthful offender statute. And that allows, when a juvenile commits a very serious crime and they're charged as an adult, that allows them to be punished as an adult, but they're still viewed as a youthful offender. So there's a more limited scope of how they can be sentenced. It's kind of in between an adult and a juvenile. And so that needs to be happening far more for the appropriate cases. Nothing in criminal prosecution is a blanket statement. Everything depends on the individual facts of the case.
Okay. So, if elected, what would you prioritize as for community safety? What is going to be your top things when it comes to your list?
Well, the top thing is working closely with law enforcement, and the other top thing is equal, tied for number one, is dramatically increase the legal training within the state attorney's office. There hasn't been an adequate training program in the state attorney's office, as far as I've been aware of, ever. They have different training programs here and there. The subject matter of those training programs sometimes makes sense for the bulk of the prosecutors there. Sometimes they're very, very specific, and they don't really help most of the prosecutors there. So what needs to happen is there needs to be regular training, ideally weekly, about how to prosecute different crimes. There needs to be training programs about, how do you prosecute a theft? How do you prosecute a battery? How do you prosecute a DUI? How do you, all these most common crimes that people encounter? Because the more legal education the prosecutor has, the easier they'll be able to resolve the case, because they'll be able to know what evidence they need to prove the case, and they'll be able to evaluate whether the case is strong or the case is weak. And if the case is weak, they'll be able to have that close relationship with law enforcement to give them a call and send them an email and say, hey, we need, additional evidence. Can you go out and do this investigation and get us some more witnesses or something along those lines? But in addition, I want to do something that's really unprecedented, is that I want to actually invite every and any law enforcement officer that wants to come into our trainings in the state attorney's office. So the state attorney is not, I'm not going to be in charge of the police. That's something that I encounter when I meet people. They say, well, police officers do this or police officers do that. And while the state attorney's, office works closely with law enforcement, I won't be in charge of law enforcement. The elected, the sheriff of Orange County and Osceola County are separate elected positions, and every police chief is placed in those positions by the elected mayor. So, we want our community to be involved in telling us as elected officials. We want the community to tell us, what do you want from us? What is important to you as far as public safety? We want people to be telling the